Outmuscled and outplayed by Novak Djokovic at Roland Garros, and then giving it right back to him at Wimbledon, the stars were aligning for a third Alcaraz-Djokovic Grand Slam final showdown at the US Open. However, tennis is never predictable, and a certain Russian got in the way of that, playing his best tennis and beating Carlos Alcaraz in the semi-final at the US Open. Did the pressure get to Alcaraz, or did Medvedev just play out of his skin? What's next for Carlitos? There's a lot to talk about here. For the first time in his flourishing career, Alcaraz entered a Grand Slam as the defending champion, having lifted the US Open trophy last year. Fresh off an incredible victory at Wimbledon and some great performances that ended in losses on hard courts in Canada and Cincinnati, Alcaraz wasn't quite at his best going into the tournament. I pointed that out in a recent video and got a lot of backlash for being a bit too harsh on the 20-year-old. Thinking about it more, I think you were right. It took Novak Djokovic 3 years to win his second slam at the age of 23. Carlos already has 2, and I don't think I properly took into account just how young he is. However, as you can tell by a very surprising defeat to Medvedev, I wasn't completely wrong either, even though Alcaraz played some scintillating tennis. So what happened at the US Open? The first round couldn't have been much easier for Carlos Alcaraz because his opponent Dominik Koepfer did this, rolling his ankle in the very first game. The German fought through it valiantly for as long as he could, but he was forced to retire halfway through the second set. Unbelievably, the crowd booed Koepfer for withdrawing, which I thought was pretty harsh. Next, the defending champion faced Lloyd Harris, who proved to be more of a challenge. The 6-3, 6-1, 7-6 scoreline is actually harsh on the South African, who played pretty well and made Alcaraz find difficult shots. Carlos did generate real power on his forehands, with his court coverage being just as good as ever. He was a bit shaky in the third set, with Harris serving well, but he pulled through, saving a total of 9 break points out of 10. Not too bad. This match was shockingly good. Evans played incredibly, matching the Spaniard for long periods and getting the very best out of him. The first set was fairly comfortable for Alcaraz, but Evans was tough and solid, going for almost every ball. The level picked up in the second set, but Carlos was still too good, hammering in forehands and handing out drop shots like there was no tomorrow. In the third set, the Brit redlined and started playing at an insane level. In fact, it might have been the best I've ever seen Dan Evans play. But when the going gets tough, the best players get going. Alcaraz went Super Saiyan in the fourth set, hitting 21 winners and only 4 unforced errors, including an insane passing shot on break point in the fourth set. It would have been too much for anyone to handle, and Evans succumbed in 4 sets. In this match, Alcaraz showcased how good at tennis he truly is, and it was exciting to watch. For sure the best third-round match I've seen in recent history. The 6-3, 6-3, 6-4 scoreline does Matteo Arnaldi a disservice here because the Italian actually played very well, like Lloyd Harris. A well-rounded player, he couldn't quite properly trouble Alcaraz, but he is definitely worth keeping an eye out for in the future, and he did well to eliminate Cam Norrie and Arthur Fils in previous rounds. For the third match running, Alcaraz was just levels above his opponent, despite the opponent playing really good tennis. In particular, Carlos' half volleys were excellent, winning him points he had no right to win. At this point, the Carlitos train was properly running and all the fans and pundits were hopping on board. However, Carrot Boy and old foe Jannik Sinner would be waiting for Alcaraz in the next round. That is, unless Alexander Zverev beat Sinner in a 5-set thriller. The German had a very solid tournament, but he stood no chance against Alcaraz. Carlos was too good again and added some more incredible shots to his ever-increasing highlight reel. Watching Alcaraz, it's interesting that he goes for these crazy Hollywood shots, but it's not out of arrogance or disrespect for his opponent. As he puts it,
I try to make the people enjoy watching tennis, watching the matches. That's what I'm trying to put us on the court.
Carlos didn't quite play as well as he did in the previous 2 rounds, but it was still the same brand of must-watch tennis we've come to expect from the 20-year-old. It was now into the semis for Alcaraz, becoming the 3rd youngest player to reach 4 slam semis, behind Boris Becker and Mats Wilander, and just in front of Novak Djokovic. Who was the next obstacle standing in Alcaraz's way? Fans treated this match as a foregone conclusion, but the Russian robbed the world of another Djokovic-Alcaraz final. The tennis on show in the semifinal was exquisite. In the first set, the two traded blows like 2 heavyweight boxers slugging it out in the middle of the ring. Winners, drop shots, volleys, recoveries, it was all on show. The Russian octopus faced a couple of breakpoints early in the set, but he managed to save them, and there were no more for either player the rest of the set. In the ensuing tiebreak, Medvedev was red hot, winning 4 points in a row to take it 7-3. Alcaraz looked a little bit mentally shaken in the second set. He was far from bad, but he didn't have any answers for Medvedev. The level of play was very high, and Alcaraz still put in some highlight-worthy shots despite losing 6-1. The service games that Alcaraz lost were all very close, with at least a couple of deuces in both games. Medvedev was insane, painting the lines and returning everything Alcaraz threw at him, including the kitchen sink. It was truly impressive to watch. Medvedev definitely played flawlessly in this set. Alcaraz then went for a toilet break before the third set and came back a different man. His variety and quality was too much to handle, and he took the third 6-3. As opposed to the other sets, the drop shots worked really well, and the crowd was doing everything they could possibly do to support Alcaraz, even cheering Medvedev double faults. The fourth set was topsy-turvy, with both players feeling the pressure. Alcaraz had a few chances at 1-1 to break the Russian, but couldn't take them. In a very tight game, Medvedev managed to steal Alcaraz's serve, playing magnificent tennis and using his long body and unorthodox style to the maximum. At 5-3 on Medvedev's serve, Alcaraz went up 15-40, but he just couldn't convert his chances. The Russian weathered the Spanish storm despite a couple of double faults and won the match. Just like that, a repeat of the 2021 final was set, and the youngest world number one ever was knocked out of the tournament. So why did Carlos Alcaraz lose? Firstly, you need to give a whole lot of credit to Daniil Medvedev. As he said in the press conference just before the tournament, "I think it's normal we talk about them, Alcaraz and Djokovic. The goal is that after the US Open, we talk about me." That will certainly be the case, and it could be the development of a new Big Three. Of course, the name the Big Three is already taken, so we'll have to come up with something new. The also Big Three? The Big Three 2.0? Nole's other Big Three? Anyway, what's particularly impressive about this victory is how Medvedev's style doesn't match up well against Alcaraz, so Daniil had to adapt his game. He lost to Carlos in the Indian Wells final back in March, and according to him,
"Well, I said I needed to play 11 out of 10. I played 12 out of 10.
The US Open always seems to bring out the best in the Russian, both on and off the court. True to his hilarious nature, Medvedev entertained on the court and stormed through the draw. But was this a choke for Alcaraz? I don't think so, because you simply don't just play that well and still lose to an opponent like Medvedev. So a large reason for his loss was just facing an incredible opponent. But there was also a lot of space for Alcaraz to improve on his performance. A couple of the weaknesses I pointed out in that slightly harsh video on Alcaraz were true in this game, namely serving and breakpoint conversion. Maybe I do know my stuff. Also, there were questions around Alcaraz's maturity. On the psychological side, the tiebreak in the first set was particularly difficult to swallow. At 3-all in the tiebreak, let's say I lost my mind, going on to say,
I'm going to change my mind. I'm not mature enough to handle this kind of matches.
On the tiebreak, he's definitely right. He was clearly affected, and it cost him that second set fairly easily, even though Medvedev was playing tennis at a stratospheric level. Once that tiebreak is lost, letting it affect you in the second set is a big problem. It's understandable, but in the future, he needs to either draw strength from it or move on entirely. The maturity comment is super interesting in my opinion. Firstly, it reveals that this match was a bit of a reality check, hence the "I'm going to have to change my mind." That's brilliant at this stage in his career, and it truly requires an immense amount of maturity and self-awareness, both traits that serve him well off the court as well as on it. His lack of maturity in this match today was mostly shown in his overexcitedness. He was a little too aggressive for most of the match, and it led to his forehand errors. In the third set and in the final at Wimbledon, he was able to contain this aggression brilliantly, finding the balance between patience and attack. This is what will really take him to the next level, but it's normal and expected of someone of his age. He's only 20, and this can't be repeated enough. Federer was cocky, and Djokovic was still throwing tantrums at this age. Nadal was just Nadal, and that's a different story. Although it may have cost him against Medvedev, his awareness is a fantastic sign for the future, and maturity comes with experience. With each extra match, Alcaraz should mature a little bit, and I could easily see him attaining and even exceeding the level of maturity of any of the Big Three. On the more technical side, Alcaraz's serve motion still doesn't look completely fluid to me, and it's something that he's said in press conferences that he needs to improve on. I can't quite pinpoint exactly what it is, but it seems like he's a bit slow early in the motion, and that hitch at the top causes him to lose a lot of that potential energy. Medvedev, as expected, returned from very deep, but Alcaraz didn't have the serving strength to really take advantage of that. He did try and make use of the serve and volley as much as possible, which was the right decision when Medvedev was returning from that far back. At 3-3 in the first set, he'd ventured forward 15 times with a 100% success rate. Medvedev just managed to start returning incredibly though, much to the misfortune of Alcaraz. The Spaniard served a grand total of 0 aces, which is simply not good enough at this level. On the other hand, he was very consistent on the second serve, not even logging a single double fault compared to Medvedev's 10, so at least that was a positive. Breakpoint conversion was once again an issue. Alcaraz could have led in the first set and should have broken Medvedev back in the fourth set. He converted only 1 out of his 9 break points, a statistic that really sticks out when considering the match. I'm not really sure what this is linked to because Alcaraz isn't one to feel the pressure. Interestingly, he only had 1 breakpoint chance in the third set, and he converted it. He only needed the 1 shot. To be fair, he had much better breakpoint conversion rates in his other games, but against Medvedev, Alcaraz couldn't quite get over the line. In his great post-match analysis, Hugh Clark breaks down the Alcaraz forehand shape. Comparing it with Roger Federer's exquisite forehand, Alcaraz has a much higher elbow as he's about to hit the ball. Combine that with his inverted takeback, which you can see here, and an allegedly lighter racket, Alcaraz needs more speed in the swing to generate the same power, making him more likely to mistime his shots. This was something he did on Medvedev's second serve at important times, and it explains the massive imbalance in forehand errors between Alcaraz and Medvedev. It was ultimately the biggest difference maker in the match, and if Alcaraz could have kept his forehand mistakes down, then this impressive number of volley winners should have helped him pull through. Easy to say from my comfortable seat on the couch, less easy to solve during a match in front of 20,000 people. I do think I was a bit reactionary in my last video, and I'm feeling pretty good for Carlos Alcaraz moving forward. I think this match comes as a bit of a reality check, especially after the highs of Wimbledon and this past summer entirely. In the press conference, Alcaraz wasn't bitter or angry, only determined, and honestly, this makes me like him more and more, though that said, I am still a Novak fan first. So, what's next for the Spaniard? Well, the season is almost over, but there still is a lot to play for, including the ATP Finals and the year-end #1 ranking in particular. Carlos was supposed to represent Spain in the Davis Cup, but he is withdrawn, stating that, "I have to listen to my body after a very long tour. I need to stop and rest, physically and mentally." He will therefore have a rest before making his debut in the China Open at the end of September. Then he'll stay in China for the Shanghai Masters and have a rest week before competing in the Swiss Indoors and the Paris Masters. To finish the year, he will take part in the ATP Finals, which take place in Turin. In terms of the #1 ranking, it's going to be an uphill climb for Carlos, as he's more than 3,000 points behind Novak. The only positive in this regard is that Djokovic has 2,850 points to defend compared to Alcaraz's 360. That said, it is a mountain climb for the Spaniard, but it's not like he's ever backed down from a challenge. Ending the year at #1 would be a significant achievement for Alcaraz, but I think he should just focus on getting the best result at each tournament one at a time. If he picks up 1 or 2 more titles, that's a very good end to the season, and if he manages to win the ATP Finals as well, well, oh boy, watch out, because he's going to have all the momentum going into 2024, even with only a finals appearance at this year's US Open. If you want to follow Carlos Alcaraz and his results from now to the end of the year, then you'll definitely want to sign up for our Tennis Plus newsletter. It covers scores, matches, and tournaments, and more content that we don't necessarily have the time to get to on YouTube. And the best part, it's absolutely free, so click the link down below to sign up. But what do you think? Why did Alcaraz lose, and what does 2024 have in store for him? Let us know in the comments, and also check out our recent video on 2023 US Open champion, the eternal Novak Djokovic.